Let's get started with the AWS config lab here. So I'm in the AWS management console. I'll type config in the search box to go ahead and track my inventory and track all the changes that are happening in my enterprise. So let's get started. And then the first thing that I have to do is to configure and create some rules in the AWS config. Now there are certain options that we should tell AWS config. And if you check this box, it will be recording all the resources, including EC2, the load balancer, Elastic Beanstalk, S3, and everything. But if you would want to, let's say, take a look at configuration changes for EC2 only or maybe S3 only, then you got to uncheck this box and then put those resources right here. So let's say I would like to look at EC2 changes only, then I'll click on EC2 and then look at specific feature of EC2 that I want to note the configuration changes for. Maybe the NAT gateway as well, maybe the volumes that are attached to the EC2 instances. And then you can also search by S3. Let's say I want to look at S3 bucket, right? So you can fill up these values like that. But in this case, I will ignore all of this and say, hey, record all the resources in this region. Okay. So AWS config is region specific. So that means that any configuration changes in North Virginia only will be recorded. But let's say there are certain global resources, for example, IAM, Route 53, DNS. So these are global resources. So if you would like to include changes in that as well, then you check that box. Now, where should these configuration changes go and reside? Well, that's in the S3 bucket as we discussed in the previous lecture. Now you've got options here, whether you want to create a bucket or choose a bucket from your account. So if you already have a bucket, you can go ahead and select that from this drop-down menu. But at times you may want to keep it in a different account. And then you got to type in the entire bucket name with S3 colon slash slash and then the bucket name followed by a prefix. Although prefix is optional here. In this case, I will let it create a bucket for me. And it is creating a bucket name. Bucket name is config hyphen bucket hyphen. This random number that you see is nothing but your account number or your account ID, which is unique to you. All right, so when changes happen, do you want to get notified? If yes, you check this box. That means every time there's a change in these resources, and if it enters the S3 bucket as a record, you will get notified. Notification is done with the service called as simple notification services. You can either create a topic, choose a topic from your account. So if you already have a topic in your SNS, then you can go ahead and select that, or choose a topic from another account. If that is the case, then you need to know the topic ARN, which you will copy and paste here. In my case, I'll just let it create a topic for me. The default name is config-topic, but then you can definitely modify this. To record the configuration changes, it needs to have certain permissions to connect to your, let's say, the S3 bucket and then use your SNS topic as well. So if you select this first option, it will use an existing AWS config service-linked role. In your IAM, there is a role called as AWS config service linked role, and it's going to use that. Or you can also choose a role from your account. In my case, I will let it use an existing one and then hit next. Now this part is really important here where you go ahead and create rules. And this comes from your compliance team, or if you have a GRC, governance risk and compliance team, they will tell you what compliance means and what non-compliance means. For example, the compliance team may say that, hey, encrypting the hard disk is really important. So you will choose the option which will maybe send you alerts when a virtual machine gets pinned up and then the EC2 instance EBS is not encrypted. Or maybe even for S3 bucket, if S3 bucket is not encrypted, then you get alerted and then it also shows up on the dashboard. Let's take a look at it. In the search box, I'll type S3 and see all the rules that are available currently as far as compliance is concerned. So here are the options as S3 CloudTrail must be enabled. S3 data events must be enabled. I'm looking at encryption part. So if I scroll down here and the bottom right hand side, I will see something like S3 bucket server side encryption enabled. That means that I will get alerted. If I go ahead and select this rule, I should get alerted if the server side encryption is not enabled. There are others as well. Take a look at this one, S3 bucket logging enabled. So if S3 bucket logging is not enabled, I will get a alert. Okay, so I'll check both of these and then hit next. And this is your summary, and then I click on confirm. It'll take a few seconds to set that up. It's got a message here that my S3 bucket cannot be created because it already exists. So I'll go back to the first step and go ahead and fix that thing quickly. Okay, so that's fixed. So my S3 bucket is config-bucket, and I just added random two numbers in the end as a suffix, and I'll click on confirm. It may take a few seconds to get that created. There you go. Okay, so now I'm back on the dashboard, and it's able to count all the resources that I have in North Virginia. For example, I've got 14 EC2 subnets, and there are 8 RDS DB subnet groups, and then there are 3 EC2 VPCs. And if I scroll down, it's going to show me all the 46 resources that I have in this region. So the next thing that I got to do after enabling AWS config and after selecting the rules is to go and look at the rules. Now, in this case, all my rules are pointing to S3 bucket, but there may be hundreds of S3 bucket that I have in my subscription. At this point, it is looking at all my buckets, and it says that all of my buckets are non-compliant. That means none of my buckets have server-side encryption on, and none of my buckets have the logging enabled. Let's click on it further and understand this. Alright, so I clicked on S3 bucket server-side encryption enabled. If I scroll down, I will be able to see all the bucket names that I have. So these are my 4 buckets, and all of them are not compliant. Let's take a look at a few more options we have here. Now, you may want to know the configuration changes or compliance changes for a particular resource. Let's say I've got this bucket called as Elastic Beanstalk US East 1 hosted in my account, and then I want to know what changes have happened to this particular bucket in the past as far as compliance and configuration is concerned. So for that, I will check my bucket, and under resource actions, you will see something like configuration timeline and compliance timeline. Let's take a look at these one by one. Speaking about configuration timeline, you will be able to see all the changes that have happened to this particular asset. So if somebody is changing versioning or lifecycle rules, and if its relationship with other entities or other resources is changing on that particular date, you will be able to see that here. And then you can also switch to a particular date if you're troubleshooting or doing probably an investigation. Let's say you want to know what happened on January 1st, and then at a particular time of that day, then you can select that and click on apply. It will take you back to that particular point in time to show you what configuration existed for that asset. The same holds true for compliance as well. So there's a compliance timeline button, and I get this message because this particular resource was just created. So you look at this, the resource was recently created, because of which it does not have any compliance timelines. So if you're doing this in your test environment, you just created an S3 bucket, you will not be able to see the compliance timeline for that. Maybe create a bucket, leave it for a few days, make a lot of changes on it, and then you will be able to see the configuration changes. All right, so I'll go ahead and close this one, which takes me back to the dashboard. Now, these graphs were developed while we are looking at these non-compliant rules. They automatically got generated for us. So it states the number of non-compliant rules and number of non-compliant resources. It's just a single dashboard. So if you would like to see how many resources are non-compliant, I'm going to just click on it, and it takes me to the resources that are actually non-compliant. You can also filter them here based on compliant or non-compliant. I'll take a quick moment to walk you through the settings section here. So what you have under settings is disabling and enabling AWS config. So there's a quick button which will turn off and on the AWS config. And if you recall, when we were configuring AWS config, we were selecting whether you would like to record all resources in this region, and if you would like to include all the global resources, etc. And then if you scroll down the S3 bucket, SNS topic, all of these can be changed. Even the IAM role that's being linked to put all the historical logs inside the S3 bucket to send you notifications, that's done by the role, and this can be modified as well. Just to summarize then, AWS config is a service offering from Amazon that will let you find the compliance report of your resources and also the configuration changes, and then build the configuration management database so that you can always go back point in time and figure out what has happened to your resource in the past.